When I was a kid, both my parents used to go to work early, so they dropped me off at my grandmother's house for breakfast before I headed to school. My grandmother passed away when I was in my junior year of high school, and from then on, I started coming straight home from school. Around that time, my mother began complaining that the handset of the phone next to her bed, one of those 80s style corded push-button phones, was off the hook when she got home. I wasn't using the phone, but she insisted it was hung up properly whenever she left for work. One day, I got home a bit early. Now, I should explain the layout of our apartment. From the front door, you look directly into the living room, the dining room, the kitchen entrance, and a short hallway leading to my parents' bedroom and my own. There were no other doors. The windows were old-fashioned narrow casements, and we were on the 3rd floor. Anyway, as soon as I walked through the door, I heard 2 distinct footsteps coming from my parents' bedroom. I dropped my school bag and stupidly ran toward the bedroom. It wasn't far, and it only took a few seconds. I burst into the room, but no one was there. However, I immediately noticed that the phone on my mother's nightstand was on the floor. The cord was stretched out as far as it could go. Later, I tried to recreate the placement by shaking the table or knocking the phone over, but I could never get the handset to unhook itself. Even when I tried to nudge it off with my finger, it would just fall onto the table or right beside it. The only way to get it where I found it was to carefully stretch the cord, place it down, and hold it for a few seconds. It couldn't have ended up there by accident. When I found the phone, I hung it back up, and it immediately rang. It was my father. He asked me what was going on. I asked him why he was asking. He told me that, apparently, just before I got home, he had called, and someone, who he thought was me, had picked up but said nothing. He eventually hung up and tried calling back, only getting through once I had placed the receiver back on the hook. One night, I was lying in bed, whispering with my friends on a group call. Everyone else in the house was fast asleep, the silence heavy and thick. Suddenly, I froze. I'm certain I heard a faint, raspy giggle coming from the hallway, right outside my bedroom door. I felt a chill run down my spine. Thinking it might be a prank, I decided to follow the sound. As soon as I stepped into the dark hallway, the giggling stopped, replaced by the rhythmic thud-thud of heavy footsteps. I followed them, my heart hammering against my ribs as they led toward the kitchen. When I reached the kitchen, I saw the window swung wide open, the cold night air rushing in. Panicked, I rushed over and slammed it shut, locking it tight. I turned around, gasping for air, only to realise the floor was bone dry despite the rain outside. Then, my eyes drifted to the kitchen table. Sitting there was my old 80s style phone, the one that had been disconnected for years. The receiver was off the hook, lying in the middle of the table. Slowly, I picked it up and pressed it to my ear. At first, there was only static. Then, a familiar, elderly voice, my grandmother's voice, whispered, "You shouldn't have closed the window, dear. Now we're both trapped in here with it." The footsteps started again, but this time they weren't coming from the hallway. They were coming from the ceiling, right above my head. I couldn't move, paralysed by the sound of something dragging itself across the attic floor above. Slowly, a dark, viscous liquid began to drip from the ceiling lamp fixture, pooling onto the kitchen floor. It smelled of wet earth and rot. "It knows you're listening," my grandmother's voice crackled again through the receiver. "It's been waiting for you to pick up the phone." The dragging noise stopped directly above me. Then, a massive slam shook the kitchen and a crack formed in the ceiling. I let out a scream that finally woke my parents, and I bolted for the front door, not even stopping to put on shoes. We spent the rest of that night in a hotel, too terrified to even pack our bags. My parents finally believed me when they saw the black liquid and the shattered ceiling the next morning. We moved out of that house within the week, leaving most of our furniture behind. To this day, I never answer a corded phone on the first ring.